Great, thanks, Ron. Well, I tell you what, Ron, I sure like that research that you present. I think Ron's one of the best in the world at planning accounts like he presented. That it seems that the speed to close, as we've implemented some of his ideas here, has increased dramatically, and we look to Ron for guidance in there. So if this is something you guys are interested, connecting with key accounts and planning to win, I hope you enjoy the research that we have to present. I've got to confess that I've got a lot of numbers coming up, a lot of data. So if you're not a data person and you don't use data to measure your sales team, to improve incrementally on what you guys are doing, this probably isn't going to be a very easy to understand presentation for you. So I'm going to assume a couple things, and I'll give you some extra resources in case my assumptions are wrong. But I'm going to assume that the attendees here on this webinar have a current prospecting process. They've got a way to turn leads that they're getting into opportunities via inside sales, closers, a specialized or generalized method. But I'm going to assume that you've got a prospecting process in place. I'm going to assume that you have a couple tools at your disposal, hopefully a CRM. Like maybe you're using salesforce.com to help manage these that Ron alluded to, and maybe you're using Ron's tool right now to help plan your process and help you be more effective at targeting these accounts. And I'm going to assume that you have a target. You know who your target is, because the things I'm going to talk about today aren't going to be very easy to implement unless you've got those three things. If you don't have a process in place right now, I recommend you read this book written by Aaron Ross, Predictable Revenue. It's an incredible book. It's the new age way of prospecting. You may have heard cold calling is dead. Aaron Ross laughs at that. He says maybe the cold's dead, part of it, but Aaron Ross founded a very successful inside sales team, lead generation team at salesforce.com, and he wrote a book about it. It's called Predictable Revenue, and this is the funnel that he walks you through in the book. And if your organization isn't using a process like this right now, you have some learning to do from this book. It's your homework from this webinar. If you're not quite sure on your messaging, on what to say as you're prospecting, I recommend this ebook that we've got called The Art of Cold Calling and the Science of Contact Ratios. We did it in conjunction with Craig Kleeman. He's one of the best in the world at once you've got the permission to continue, you've got a live conversation with a prospect, getting them to the next step. He's an expert in that. He speaks to sales organizations across the globe, and I remember first hearing about Craig at getting appointments when he explained a story where his brother, he was sitting with his brother in a Chicago airport, and in walks one of his music heroes, Bono from U2, and his brother leaned over to him and said, "Hey, you're an expert in getting appointments. Let's see you get one with Bono." And sure enough, if you read his book, The Must React System, help you get your core content and your messaging together, you'll find out that he got that meeting as bet from his brother. I think he got dinner out of the deal and a meeting with Bono. So I recommend that as a resource if you're struggling there. So connecting with target accounts, we see often that the easiest part to get started, your most leveraged first activity, is to see if you're already responding immediately to what your marketing team's already generating for you. This slide here depicts the results from the original lead response research we did with James Oldroyd, who is a research fellow at MIT at the time. And you may have seen this research out and about at a trade show or online. It's pretty widely distributed. But the moral of the story is that you got to get to your leads fast. It doesn't seem very revolutionary, unfortunately, but and we hear large enterprises claim that they, we don't have a problem with that. We make sure and respond to our leads. But this research shows that if you respond within 5 minutes to your inbound inquiries, you're 100 times higher likelihood of getting in touch with them than just 30 minutes out. Can you believe that? Does that even sound real? and not just getting a hold of them, but the chance of qualifying that lead and having that lead enter the pipeline is 21 times higher. 5 minutes to 30 minutes. That's crazy. And so we preach this all over and tell companies you need to get responding to your leads quicker. And we even everyone told us that they were doing great at this. That's not no one was willing to admit that they weren't responding to their leads. So we created this technology response audit. We secret shop a site and then see how long it takes them to respond. And we've done it to over 10,000 companies now. And this slide's a little bit outdated, and we have more recent studies even, but I pulled an older slide. But the average response time, can you believe, is 2 days almost. Can you imagine walking into Nordstrom's, the nice lighting, space everywhere? Maybe this is kind of symbolic of having a nice website, you know, and perfect website, best converting website in the world. But you walk into Nordstrom's, you tell the sales rep, hey, I'd like to buy a pair of shoes. I haven't done this myself. I don't shop at Nordstrom's very frequently, but I can imagine, wouldn't it be crazy if the sales rep said, yeah, you know, well, we'd be happy to help you. Would you like to come back in next Tuesday? We can help you get a pair of shoes. It's crazy in retail, but for some reason we do that in B2B leads. We've shown time and time again that companies aren't responding to their inbound leads. So it's hard to get anywhere to begin talking about other complex issues within the organization if you're not even responding to the leads that your marketing team is spending money and effort generating for you. So also in this response audit, we find that 1.4 times is the average number of attempts before a sales rep gives up. They call on average 1.4 times before just abandoning the lead. Now, if there's any marketing on the calls, that just makes you sick, I know. So we found here with this research study, it was a corollary to the MIT study that if you call 6 times, you wring 90% of the value out of a lead. So if you only make 1.4 times, they're only getting 50% of the value out of the lead. So that doesn't make sense. Make sure your process is calling at least 6 times. This is called connecting with target accounts. If you're making 1.4 times, you're going to get 50% of them. And here's a report of one of our customers. I wanted to show you this appointment set field on dial attempt 1. They set 37% of all their calls on dial attempt 1 was an appointment set. On dial attempt 2, that's 24%, and most companies don't even get that far. So you ought to be measuring this within your own organization, find your diminishing returns, and find out how many dials. I mean, you never hit 100%, right? You never are able to get a hold of 100% of them, but you'll find your law of diminishing returns, and it certainly isn't 1.4 dials, that's for sure. This is another interesting study. What if your meetings are usually scheduled on Wednesdays? Or what if your sales kickoff is on a Thursday? You're wasting the best days of the week, which are found to be Wednesdays and Thursdays, if you're not incentivizing your reps to be on the phones during those days. The next one is almost the same story. You know, wouldn't it be great if you could freeze time and just call everyone in between 8 and 9 in the morning when it's easiest to, this is the prospect's local time, 8 to 9 a.m. and 4 to 5 p.m. Those are the best times to get a hold of people. It would be great if you could just freeze time and you know, call during that hour all day. Look at the difference in between 12 to 1 and 1 and 2 contact ratios and 8 to 9, 4 to 5. Well, because if you're calling nationally, there is a way to do it, right? You can call, you know, there's the East Coast, 8 to 9. Next hour would be Central, 8 to 9. As long as you're calling 8 to 9 when it's the local time zone for your prospect, then you are practically freezing time. And your reps are able to be more effective. Imagine what that would do for your contact ratios. How many more conversations a day would your reps be having? if they were calling locally 8 to 9 instead of catching someone at lunch when they're not very likely to reach the phone. So this is another report that we pulled. This is just straight out of Salesforce with the Power Dialer, and 42% of calls that this rep made, or this team made, in between 8 and 9 were an actual contact. Wow, that doesn't happen all day long. 9 and 10, it declines a little bit, and then you see it picks up again in between 3 to 5. So this is by calling, by optimizing your calling efforts to the local time in between these optimal times a day, you're able to have more conversations with a prospect and connect with these target accounts. This is a crazy thing that I can't even believe people are still doing to this day. The surest way to ensure that no one picks up your rep's calls is to have a blocked phone number. Can you believe that? People to this day still have a blocked caller ID, so the prospect can't see who's calling. Well, no one picks up the phone, and it's almost as bad for a toll-free number. So we found that by having a local presence in that territory, and by calling, Dallas with a 972 area code, and owning that phone number so they can call back with a 972 area code, it increases conversions both ways, both on your outbound efforts, and then also on their ratios when they respond back and they're trying to respond to the prospecting efforts, whether it be email or a voicemail you leave or whatever. So that's, and then Trish Bertuzzi, founder of the Bridge Group, anecdotally said that she saw 50% improvement just by using this single tip to increase contact ratios. And our research shows that it's about 57.8% just by using a local number. So, oops, excuse me. That's what we had about these 7 rules of contact ratios, and I skipped one for time's sake, which was using a direct dial number, making sure that the data that you're using, that you're calling, is a direct dial, not a phone tree number. Your reps are going to have a 43.2% increased contact ratio by calling a direct line. So that means wherever you're getting your lead data for your outbound prospecting efforts, be it data.com, ZoomInfo, Net Prospects. These are big players in the B2B world, good quality data. Make sure that you're asking for direct dials. So these are the 7 rules that we have found to increase the contact ratios and connecting with these key accounts, with the goal being having your reps have more conversations per day. And if you can imagine, out of 100 dials, if your reps are getting 15 connects, if they're getting 15 conversations a day out of 100 dials, by using any one of these, you can incrementally increase that number of conversations. And so we found that the sum total of the effect of these 7 rules, the contact ratios, have doubled and tripled, and in some organizations, 350 times more conversations per day for these reps. The same rep, the same process of appointment setters, scheduling appointments for closers, this high-tech and optimal performing structure that we've found here that's gaining more and more traction these days, just by implementing these 7 rules and measuring and guiding your team by the data. So Ron, that's all I had. Did we have any questions come in?
Yeah, actually, Todd, someone asked you a question. The question was, is each call attempt accompanied with a voicemail, and how do you blend them with calls where you don't leave a voicemail?
Oh, that's a good question. So what we do internally, and as Ken Krogh has pioneered this here at our organization and shares it with the presentations he does at the American Association of Inside Sales Professionals, we have a call sequence. So on the first call, it will be a call, an email, and a voicemail is what he'll do on the first call. And second call, just a call. Third call, just a call and an email. So there's this kind of escalating urgency that we use inside our organization to kind of vary the media that we use. And Ken preaches that the media is often more important than the message. And he's found that LinkedIn outperforms email 7 to 1. So you know, it's not just calling, but these 6 attempts need to be varied media with a clear message and a next step that you're trying to push the prospect to. And we have Ken outlines a first call sequence in a webinar just all by itself, how to build an inside sales high velocity team. And if they're interested, it's just insidesales.com/webinar, and you can find that link there.
So there's another question here, actually, Todd. Someone said, isn't it more effective when leaving a voicemail to leave sufficient information so the person understands the purpose of the call? Todd? Todd, are you on mute by any chance? Okay. Okay, so Todd, are you there? So there were, let's see. So there were a few other questions. Todd, can we hear you? Okay. So there were a few other questions. What we'll do is, in our response, we will respond to some of the questions about lead generation. There was another question going back to the sales planning, which was asking about how do we get started improving the sales planning process. So, if I may, I'll jump in there. Okay. One way, a few key things you can do here is review your current process or review your tool and identify where you have the greatest need for improvement, of course, starting there. Sometimes the first step is just to improve your current tool. But let's say you're using a spreadsheet. If you are, then look at the tools that are available, review them, make sure that which ones meet your decision criteria best. Make sure you're communicating your objectives on why you're using this new tool, and make sure you train all your people, make sure the management team uses the new tool as well, and then ultimately identify, share, and celebrate successes. So that's an answer to that one. Someone says that in my presentation I mentioned several times about being X% more effective. I think you might be talking, John asked this question about where the top sales organizations, the research actually identified how good a sales organization was based on certain criteria. They identified that the top sales organizations were more likely to do certain things. And so when I was talking about more effective, I was saying the top sales organizations were more effective by 45% than the rest of the group. Okay. So someone's asking. Let's see. So there are a number of questions here, and I'm sorry we can't get Todd back. So Todd, if you are there and you hear me, maybe unmute or call back in or whatever.
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. So here's a couple of questions. Do you have any stats on calling high versus calling low, and the best way to communicate to the C-level people?
Yeah. So, and actually, I think this, I will defer to Aaron Ross's expertise here on this, in that book I alluded to, Predictable Revenue. There's no reason to start low. what Aaron Ross says is when you're prospecting to these target accounts, which are, by the way, often not small companies, why would they typically be a target account if they're not, large? So he says, and maybe I won't go back to the slide, but the hardest part, he says, about prospecting to these larger companies is finding the right person to talk to. It's not selling once you get in to the right person. It's just simply finding the right person. It seems kind of like an administrative task more than a sales task, actually identifying. That seems like something an intern could do even, rather than a high salaried sales executive, right? So his recommendation is simply to ask. When you're sending emails, ask for the right person to talk to in a text-based, simple email. Don't get crazy marketers with your HTML on this. This is simply telling who you are and asking to be pointed in the right direction of who to talk to regarding your stuff. And you will invariably find, it sounds too simple to be true, but you'll find that they respond with your decision maker. So, just ask. If your database is made up mostly of sales reps, and you're not really selling to the reps, you're selling to the VPs, then you may just use that strategy to get connected to the VP. But always start high. If you're looking to build a new campaign, start at the as high as you can, and it's different for the organization. You may not be targeting the CEO, but based on your process, start high, asking for the right person to talk to. You'll get there faster than by trying to sell to the wrong person.
That's great, Todd. There's another question here, which is, I alluded to earlier, isn't it more effective to leave a voicemail with sufficient information rather than just a quick, please call me type of message? How do you configure your voicemail?
Yeah, so sufficient information sounds to me like a long voicemail. I don't know, it's kind of a subjective metric, right? Sufficient information. Whatever you can do in 26 seconds to build urgency, build value, that's what you ought to do. If it's longer than that, and I was alluding to this study earlier, we found that every second after that, your contact or your response rate drops 5%. So don't get too crazy with the voicemails. I think we've all gotten them. Sell what you can.
It's great to have that kind of data to support us. Here's another question for you. Is there a more efficient way to generate leads when calling very small businesses that are, 2 to 5 million revenue range?
More efficient. As far as time for the rep, it's all about this campaign I alluded to, just asking for the right person in a text email. You ought to be doing your inbound marketing, okay? It's something that I started off my presentation alluding to, but I figured with the sales audience, they may not think that that's as valuable for them. But you ought to have a marketing team that's doing the go-to channels, the email marketing for you, your pay-per-click, your trade shows. You ought to be going where these guys are. You ought to be blogging. You ought to be producing content relevant to them so they'll organically find you. And in order of cost effectiveness, it would probably be the organic content producing, well, like we're doing today, right? And if you don't think that works, you ought to ask yourself why you're on this webinar, because you thought it was interesting enough to sign up and attend. So you've got your content marketing, then your email, very cost effective, low cost, and you get conversations rolling for your reps to follow up with. So those two, if you had to pick two, and then there's plenty of material out there on additional channels to explore when you're ready.